Motion from Commissioner Barr, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Vice Chair O'Neill Vivanco. Is there any discussion around that motion? All right, let's go to a vote then. Start on the phone with Commissioner Montano.
Aye.
Gotcha. Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Neill Vivanco.
Aye.
Commissioner Overby. Commissioner Damiani.
Aye.
Aye for myself. The agenda has passed. Thank you. Moving forward to public forum. See a lot of public participants in the room. Is there any on the phone?
Yeah, Chair Hogan, we have a few members of the public on phone, and if wish to speak during public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. You're going to promote over Felipe.
Hi, good evening. My name's Felipe. I am hopping on board and speaking out to make sure. I saw on the agenda that parking is an issue here, and I just wanted to make sure that the original plan called for a reduction in parking, and now a study has been commissioned to add that parking back on. And I just want to make sure that by adding back that parking that was to be eliminated, we're not sacrificing any accessibility for alternate modes of transportation, pedestrians, bikers, scooters, whatever, that we're not continuing to prioritize motor vehicle traffic through our downtown area. Yeah, that is all for now.
Name for our records here?
Oh yeah, Hoyos, Hoyos.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
Yep.
At this time, there's no one else signed up for public comment.
All right. I will close public forum and move forward to item 4 on our agenda, the consent agenda with 3 items on it. Approval of our draft minutes from November, an ADA spout removal 197 North Willard Street, and an ADA spout removal on Hyde Street.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
We'll give the motion to Commissioner Montano. Thank you. And a second from Commissioner Barr. Thank you for that. Is there any discussion around the motion? All right, let's go to a vote then. Phone, please. Commissioner Montano.
Aye.
Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Neill Vivanco.
Aye.
Commissioner Overby.
Aye.
Commissioner Damiani.
Aye.
Aye for myself. Consent agenda is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving forward to item 5, Great Streets, Main Street intersection control discussion and general project updates.
Slide down.
All right. Hello, I am Laura Wheelock with the Public Works Department. I am one of the project managers for the Great Streets Project. We're here to continue our conversation on this project as it continues to move forward. Here with me tonight, I have my colleague Olivia Darice, also one of the project managers, as well as Jen Connolly with VHB from our consulting team. Jen's going to give us a presentation overview focusing on the intersection analysis, which is one of the motions that the commission acted on earlier this year as you were recommending the concept plan forward to the city council. And so we're here to give you guys an informational only update tonight. If there's action that you guys want to take coming out of this informational update, we will do that at a next meeting. That is our intent for tonight. Just before we get too deep into that item, I do want to highlight in your memo, we give some really brief updates as to where the project is at right now. We do have another communication that we prepared for more kind of broad consumption with a a lot more meat in each of the different topics. So that'll be shared out on our website. But if you're interested in it, we can also provide you a copy. But really, to be able to kind of quickly go through and honor one counselor request is Counselor Jang wanted to make sure that we mentioned to you the work that is happening on the city's ravine sewer as part of this project. And so if there's any questions as it relates to that work, there's more details again in the other communication, or we're happy to kind of talk offline because it's not quite what the commission does, but it was asked to be shared. Other things that we have going on, which I think the caller today was talking about, is the parking advisory study and committee and study that are occurring along with this. And really, that's not about adding the parking back into the project area. It's about making sure that we analyze where within a 5-minute walk of the corridor available parking already exists. And then also being able to make and review some, current trends as it relates to utilization and whatnot. But that'll be coming as a future update. It's more just to let everybody know that it's happening still. And with that,
And
I will.
I think the one thing I would love to just be clear about, if there is any interest on the part of the council or the commission to add parking in, that there will, of course, be a commitment to protect the enhanced public realm bike and pedestrian spaces that we have worked hard to design into this project. So the caller and the public should understand that this is going to be a fully multimodal project as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, I will let Jen start sharing her screen and introduce herself a little more.
Sure, thank you. Again, my name is Jennifer Conley. I'm with VHB, and I am part of the project team really looking at the traffic operations in this case and also participating in the parking study. But today I'm here to talk to you about traffic operations and the intersection analysis that we conducted when we're looking at what alternatives should be considered for the Main Street corridor. Looks like I am sharing. So as I'm sure you're all familiar, but in case there's anyone at home who is not, the study area in this case is Main Street, the Main Street corridor extending from Battery Street to Union Street. It does include 7 locations that we looked at. The goals of this analysis as we were evaluating was the goals of the Great Streets program, which are to create streets that are walkable and bikeable, sustainable, vibrant, and functional. And one of the added things that we really paid particular attention to at the direction of Public Works was prioritizing safety for all of the users in the corridor. And one of the things that was set as a bar right away to help prioritize that safety was reducing traffic speeds in the corridor to 20 miles per hour. And we do that a number of ways through the design. Then we took a look at 4 of the alternatives, which were either roundabouts or signalized intersections, taking a look at right-of-way impacts of those alternatives, looking at building structure impacts, which are obviously more significant than just a right-of-way impact, bicycle and pedestrian operations, activation space impacts or opportunities, the resulting heat island effects, the safety impacts of the alternatives, and looking at the traffic operations at each of the intersections. So to do that, we started with what the design criteria should be. Now, looking at the roundabouts, you'll see on this slide, it's a little hard to get into the detail. There's kind of 2 different options for the roundabouts. There's the mini roundabout, which is a smaller circulating area and as such requires less right-of-way. And then there's the standard roundabout. Now, there were a number of locations that were identified as important to accommodate truck turns at. One of those being Pine Street, for example. We're going to have, some truck turning at Pine, at Battery, and looking at Winooski and St. Paul were the other locations that it was appropriate to have the larger diameter roundabouts so that we could more easily accommodate those design vehicles. Where we could, we looked at the mini roundabout, and the mini roundabout is a smaller diameter and obviously then takes up less right-of-way. And that's more appropriate for a location that has lower side street volumes, less truck percentages turning, and a number of other things. Just to put these in context, the Shelburne Street roundabout is a standard roundabout, so it's more in line with those standard dimensions. And I know there was some materials that were circulated that looked at a roundabout in Athens, Ohio, and that was more of the design of a mini roundabout. Just so that you can put that in the context of some of the roundabouts that have been talked about recently. Looking at traffic signals, the design criteria that we looked at was, can we slow the vehicles down, and can we prioritize pedestrians? And the way that we were looking at that is we want that pedestrian phase to be called every single cycle. And the way we do that is through concurrent pedestrians, so that the pedestrians cross the side streets at the same time as Main Street is in the green phase. In order to give the pedestrians additional safety, we give them a leading pedestrian interval so that the pedestrian can be out, more visible, and almost on some of the side streets, almost across the street by the time the cars get the green. So there's an all red phase that those pedestrians get started during. In addition, having that two-phase signal operation really helps the pedestrian. Every phase they will be called, unlike at a lot of the locations now where they have to push the button, and in a lot of cases, all traffic has to stop to process those pedestrians, which then impacts the traffic operations. We also took a look at optimizing, when we were laying out the traffic signals, that 20-mile-per-hour flow through the corridor, so that the driver is not rewarded for going faster by catching that next green light, really making it so that band of progression keeps the drivers at 20 miles per hour. So we started to look at what those impacts would entail, and the roundabouts versus the signals. On this graphic, you can see the results for the roundabouts are shown in circles, and the results for the traffic signals are shown in traffic signals. The roundabouts, obviously, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, take a larger footprint, and as a result have larger right-of-way impacts, and in a lot of cases at these key intersections, structure impacts. And in the memo that was in your packet, we get into specifically which of those structures would be most affected by the roundabouts. The signalized intersections, we're actually reducing the cross-section on, which really helps slow the traffic down. That a smaller cross section has the impact to the driver's behavior of slowing the traffic down, and it also then therefore doesn't have the right-of-way impacts that are associated with the roundabouts. Then we looked at bicycle and pedestrian operations, and we know the operations are important, as are the safety for these users. I'm going to separate safety and talk about that in a minute. Roundabouts do have a significant benefit to pedestrian operations in that you're crossing a single leg at a time, and that in general the drivers do yield to the pedestrians, and so the pedestrians do have an improved operation. Cyclists end up being a little more challenging at roundabouts because they need to be in with the traffic or completely separated and over with the pedestrians. And sometimes that yielding situation can be more challenging. There is a potential, there are studies, crash modification factors have shown that in some cases there's a potential increase for those bicycle vehicle crashes. And then the only other thing that we noted is that with the crossing guard situation at South Union, we may need to have an additional crossing guard at that location. As far as at the signalized location, to improve those bike ped operations, as I already mentioned, there would be that 7 seconds of all red time. And in addition to that, the crossing distances would be significantly shorter. As I said, the cross section will be significantly more narrow than it is currently. And so that the time that pedestrian is exposed on the street crossing is significantly reduced over what's happening currently. And again, the cyclist can travel through the intersection or use a separated facility at the signalized intersections as well. So in both cases, there is an improvement to the operations for the bicycles and the pedestrians. As I mentioned briefly, as far as the right-of-way impacts are concerned, they're connected to the activation space impact, because the Great Streets, initiative is really about activating the street and making the street more usable for all users. The signalized intersections provide more of an opportunity for that, because they are not using as much of the right-of-way and really set up for the ability to be able to create that more vibrant street where there is the activation space. available. The roundabouts lose some of that because of the size of those kind of entry areas as you're approaching the roundabout itself, and the flare basically for the approach and the departure at the roundabout. The heat island impacts is a little mixed. The advantage to the signalized intersection of providing additional activation area actually results then, unfortunately, in greater heat island impacts, not as significant as with the roundabouts, but you'll see here on this slide that the impacts to the heat island effect is more similar between the two alternatives than some of the other criteria that I've discussed so far. But with the signalized intersections, more of that heat island impact has to do with those activation areas that are created. Now, to get into safety impacts, one of the key things in either design, as I said, is that we're lowering the travel speed of the vehicles, and that is a very significant indicator towards serious injury and death is the speed of the vehicles that are traveling. And because, again, regardless of whether it's signalized intersections or roundabout, are going with the design speed of 20 miles per hour, that will really slow down what is happening. This is not just signing speed limit 20 miles an hour. This is including the progression and or the design features that will really slow that traffic. Some of that will come from the two-phase operation at the traffic signals, because now people who are turning vehicles will be slowing down through traffic by being in that traffic stream and not being pulled out of the traffic stream, and or at the roundabouts through the design features of how the traffic is entering the roundabout and exiting the roundabout. As far as the only other thing, as I already mentioned, there have been mixed studies as to the benefits of roundabout. As again, through the design speed, you do reduce the speed, but there is some concern for the potential for cyclist-related crashes increasing actually at the roundabouts. Looking at traffic operations, a few things. In general, roundabouts are not typically installed at locations with high pedestrian activity. And the reason for that is because the roundabout's effectiveness, usually the big selling feature is that it keeps all of the traffic moving and that all of the traffic continues to flow. But in this case, because of that incredibly large friction caused by the significant pedestrian volumes, that flow is going to be interrupted very frequently, and as a result will back up the vehicles. The vehicles are not going to get that free flow condition. And at some points it's good, if the pedestrians are traveling in dribs and drabs across the street, the vehicles will encounter significant delay. And that's what we ended up seeing in our modeling once we included the pedestrians in the modeling for both the roundabouts and the signal at the level of the pedestrian traffic that is out on this corridor. We saw that significant increase in delay associated with the roundabout alternatives. Now, there is also increase in delay associated with the signals because, as I said, we are taking away some capacity there by taking away some of the turn lanes, with the exception at key locations where turn lanes were determined to be critical. So there are, and you can see on this graphic, shown in orange, is some increase in delay associated with the traffic signals, but not to the level that was anticipated with the roundabouts. And so ultimately we did the evaluation of what is the net, evaluation between roundabouts and signals. And what you can see on this slide is there are a number of categories where the results are equal or mixed, which is the bike pedestrian operation and the safety impacts. But really the signals then take the day as far as minimal right-of-way and building impacts, the increased activation space opportunities associated with the signals, the reduced heat island impact, and then the resulting traffic operations. And that is all I put together. Happy to answer if there's a question.
Great, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from staff?
No, really, this opportunity is for the commission to be able to ask questions of the design team and staff as we continue on with the project and continue to work through various issues.
Great, thanks, appreciate it. Check with Commissioner Mutanu.
Hey there. Thank you for the update. And I understand that this is a really huge project and needing to consider all of these different parts is really important, and particularly how they all come together. So the question that I'm asking is about that South Winooski Avenue intersection, and this kind of includes like all of them on the corridor, but that one, if I'm not mistaken, is like among the most dangerous in the state of Vermont. And part of that isn't just Main Street, right? The corridor that's like the main focus of this particular project, but also South Winooski Avenue. So I'm wondering if, when considering these roundabout versus signalized intersection alternatives in particular, and then also more generally throughout the project, how have you like considered like the traffic moving on the cross streets and their speeds, and sort of like the area around the Main Street corridor? Because I feel like when you account for those things, that could certainly impact the decision in numerous possible ways.
That we really looked at as we did this modeling was not processing the side streets to be an effective through route. What we did is we impacted the side streets so that they encountered more delay, so as to not encourage folks to work their way down through the grid in this area. Again, knowing the number of pedestrians and the fact that this is not an area we want to encourage additional traffic or create capacity on those side streets. In addition, as far as the overall safety is concerned, especially when looking at signalized intersections, even on the side streets, we're looking for those opportunities to narrow the curb width so the pedestrians have shorter crossing distances, when we're really thinking about pedestrian safety, if nothing else. But truly, the speed reduction to 20 miles per hour, I would say, is the greatest improvement to safety at this location.
If I can also just add or remind, the project does start at Union Street. And even at that, as we've worked with the civil side of our design team, the limits of how to incorporate the bike facility goes even to the mid-block at Edmonds. And so really, this look at trying to inform drivers of the speed that they really need to be moving through and really introduce the gateway of the city before they hit Winooski will start around Edmonds. So that should help.
Yep. Thanks so much for the update. I would venture to say that both South Winooski and like South Union are quite major through streets, especially moving between the South End and the Old North End. And certainly considering those intersections as the place where we really want to slow down traffic moving, in all directions, really to make that facility safe for people moving through is an important consideration. So that's why I would advocate for considering like a roundabout, especially for that South Winooski intersection. But I look forward to keeping this conversation going and following along with the project. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Barr.
Well, thanks for the update. This was very informative to me, and you kind of already answered. My main concern is slowing traffic to 20 miles an hour and knowing how fast people want to try and go during morning and evening commutes. Would they just spread out and start going down Maple and King and all those others? But it sounds to me like you've already looked at that, addressed it. And I'll just say for the record that there may be some application for roundabouts there, but I do agree with the study that it does not make it safer for bicyclists, for cyclists going through. At least with a light, you have a light to stop a car coming in one direction or another, and you know that it's okay to go. But if you try and go with the traffic around the roundabout, most cars are looking at other cars. I've experienced that. But there are some applications for roundabouts, maybe some of the other streets down further. Really.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair O'Neill Vivanco.
Great, thank you so much. So just a couple of questions, I think. So Do you have the data, and I probably should have done this myself, I apologize, how Winooski Avenue has rated in safety with the restriping? And I know that was right before the pandemic. Do you have any data on that to see how it certainly feels safer as a bike, as a biker, and as a kind of pedestrian? But
I don't believe, because post-pandemic, we lost our transportation planning staff, that we've been able to do a post-study on the corridor. But that is certainly something that we could check pretty quickly, as our new planning staff do start the end of the month and mid-January. So
okay,
And I would just add that,
it's between.
yeah, great. That with the North Avenue corridor, where we did the 4 to 3 lane configuration, having worked through that, traffic modeling and for crash data, to get significant crash data to be statistically significant, industry standard is such that you want 2 to 3 to 4 years of data to really have robust information. So we're really just at the 2-year point at this point, and I think we're gonna need a longer stretch to really fully understand what the impacts are long term, as people have adjusted now to the new traffic pattern.
okay,
That said, we can work to get you what we have today.
okay, that's good. I mean, I remember that striping, there were some people who thought we were gonna like fall into the earth, and I think we all kind of survived that, and it feels a lot safer. So any information, because that impacts that intersection, it's really that Main Street point that Commissioner Mutano was talking about. And so, you know, from your work, Pine, Battery, St. Paul, and Winooski would need the larger roundabout. And I think about that Winooski one and wonder, what are those traffic calming? Because you come down, so coming down Main Street, past Union, and not even talking about going up right now, just passing down, and then it's wide and then it's narrow. And I think figuring out, and you guys are the traffic engineers, but figuring out ways to communicate to all traffic, meaning cyclists as well as vehicles, that we're narrowing and removing it, instead of that big expansive space that you get right at the bottom of Main Street as you cross Winooski. So
Yep.
that would be helpful to see how that's going to work if we don't have the space for a roundabout. How's that kind of going to work?
Yep, so the consulting team did just complete the preliminary plans. We're working on getting a set to post online as part of the outreach that's about to happen. So that'll be available very soon for you to be able to see how the curb lines are changing throughout the whole corridor. When the council approved the concept study, the general curb line goes from anywhere from 55 to 75 in each block down to 40.
What's
And
that in relation compared to St. Paul Street?
St. Paul Street's curb is 35 in the double parked areas.
Okay.
40, I think, is the curb to curb on Battery Street right now. I'd have to think of a street that actually has.
Okay. Right, but I'm just trying to get a sense of like a street I've crossed. That would be
So let me bracket that conversation with the crosswalks are 30 feet in general.
okay.
So that's the neck downs that will happen at each intersection. Crossing Main Street will generally be 30 feet
Okay.
instead of the 55 to 70 that it is now.
Okay. That's significant. A significant change. Okay. And then related to the crosswalk is you talked about the two-phased signal operation. I cannot express how important that is. To be a pedestrian and to have a light turn, you have now a target on your body, and the vehicle is the assault weapon. So I think that two-phase, that's what it's called? The two-phase signal operation, where the pedestrian has the comfortable lead instead of having, a parent drag in a kid or hauling granny by the elbow, that we really have a reasonable time to get to the other side of the road. So thank you for adding that as well. Crosswalks, I think that was one roundabout question. It looked like Church Street may have been the one that kind of hit the marks on a possible roundabout location. At least we had the green circle on a couple of the pages. Is there any, except for one, activation space? Was there any consideration to try to situate a roundabout somewhere in the corridor, either, start and end Battery, Winooski, problems with Winooski, or somewhere in the middle? And what would that possibly look like?
Yeah, if you want to speak to kind of the one-off or how
Yeah.
a single one would fit.
We were asked that question as we were doing our analysis, and the benefits of once most locations are going to be signalized are to have the whole corridor be progressed and get all the way through. And so to put a roundabout in the middle of that splits up those platoons. So then you would end up on either side of the roundabout with the potential for longer queuing and challenges. And our challenge at Church is, although the traffic volumes are very low, the pedestrians are also very high. And so then you do end up in that situation that I said, that the pedestrians may end up kind of gridlocking, the intersection, just because they're constantly crossing.
Okay.
Was there also an occasion where the adjacent signalized intersections queue backed up through roundabout?
Yeah, well, given the size of the diameter of the roundabout, then the queuing side for the signals on either side would be that much smaller. So we would end up with then that congestion kind of through the roundabouts if it were isolated in the middle of the signalized intersection.
And that also would have potential impact for more vehicular traffic than skirting and going down, say, King Street.
It would encourage side street cut-throughs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's all for now. Thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Overby.
All of mine have been answered so far, so.
Go for it.
I know I've been in communication with you all. But to start with, I know when we talked about this in May, there was actually 3 different design options for those intersections. The first one was the roundabout, the second one was signalized, and the third one was the all-way stop, like we have at Pearl and Winooski. So that one, the one that's the all-way stop, right now that isn't in any of the materials here. Or am I missing something?
She's talking about a barn dance for pedestrian phase.
Oh, the always stop for the
Yes.
pedestrian phase. Oh,
When all 4
Yes.
directions are stopped, so the pedestrians can cross and finish that cycle.
right.
Is that not- was there a reason why that wasn't
We call that an
considered?
exclusive pedestrian phase. The challenge with the exclusive pedestrian phase is then that is added on to then the vehicular phases, which really ends up increasing your cycle length and increases then your delay for the pedestrians because they have to wait through all of the time that the vehicles are going, whether it's the main street or the side street, and then they get their time. And it increases the delay for the vehicles as well. So your operations suffer on both sides. In addition, usually when you have an exclusive pedestrian phase, you make it push button so that in those off-peak times or at tonight, there might not be as many people out there. You wouldn't necessarily call it every single phase. It wouldn't be on what I call recall. The advantage of the 2-phase with the leading pedestrian interval, you can have that on recall so that I know anytime I walk up to that intersection that when those cars get the green, before that I get 7 seconds to cross the street to get started, before the vehicles start. But I don't even have to push the button. I know every single time, and the driver knows every single time that I'm going during that time as well. So the exclusive phase can be effective, especially in a situation where you're going to have a lot of diagonal movements or there's, a reason to include it. But here on this corridor, again, to get progression, we want the driver expectation to be when the pedestrians are going to get to go, and we want the pedestrian expectation to be, and we want all of their delay in operation the delay to be low and their operation to be good. And the best way to accomplish that is through the two-phase cycle.
Yeah, I've just noticed that that intersection at Pearl and Winooski is it feels like one of the safest intersections for a pedestrian to get through, and it really does clog everybody up, and we all go at once. So I don't I understand what you're saying about the people thinking it's going to take longer, and people have to wait, but that has some other consequences. So anyway, so that answers my question that you just thought there was too much delay for the drivers and too much delay for the pedestrians
as well.
to
both.
wait to do a,
Yes.
everybody goes, everybody walks at once and, okay. The questions that I have, I've got some other comment, but I just wanted to, I had made some notes on my document that you had sent us in advance. And you talk about the design is to make sure that it's 20 miles an hour flow through for the drivers to get through down Main Street. That's the goal. What is the current average speed right now on Main Street that you are trying to reduce it from?
You looked up, in the downtown core between Winooski and Battery, it was 24 miles an hour is the reported speed of vehicles. So right now it's like, so you want it to go down from 24 to 20. And, okay, so that was one of the questions that I had. And on your page 1 of the, I think it is page 1, I had a question about the projected anticipated an increase in traffic.
Yes.
And there's like three different numbers. You have, in one place it says, traffic volumes were increased by 7% to represent background traffic until 2037, which is what we're trying to design this thing for. But then a little farther down it says, the conservative approach results in volumes approximately 40% higher than the traffic volumes originally modeled for the Champlain Parkway project. And then later on, right after that, it says, and 90% higher than the CCRP C2040 regional model.
Yes.
So what are we anticipating
we
this
get there?
design is going to handle? The 7%, the 40, or the 7, or the 90?
Well, they are all actually the same number. So we looked at what was available for traffic volume projections for this time period. And there were a few things. There was the Champlain Parkway future volumes. There were the CCRPC regional model volumes. And then we developed volumes based on that. We went out and did counts and showed how volumes compared to those other sources. We increased them by the 7%. And then we also added the traffic associated with permitted developments. So then we did add in how is the Rail Yard Enterprise going to affect downtown traffic? How is the Champlain Parkway going to affect downtown traffic? How are all of these small condo developments going to affect downtown traffic, and added those all in. And our point in that last sentence that you read was just to say when we built it that way, we ended up with volumes that were higher than was predicted when the Champlain Parkway was permitted a long time ago, and when the 2040 regional model was created a while ago as well. So those folks weren't anticipating what we're seeing as potential traffic levels in 2037. And that's really to present that worst case scenario. Let's just make sure, let's use the highest volumes. And so that's what we based our analysis on.
So are we anticipating 90% increase on the traffic on Main Street, or 40% or 7%?
I could find out what that exact number is, but what we did is we increased that traffic by 7% and then added those particular developments, which at every intersection affected traffic differently. Because as you know, the Champlain Parkway is going to change some traffic patterns as how people get through. So it isn't just along the entire corridor a set percentage increase. The 40 and the 90 are just comparing to what people thought 20 years ago traffic would be. It's not actually what's happening out there. It isn't an increase over today. That I'm
Okay, well,
referring to.
that's why, that was what I was trying to figure out, because it's
Nope.
relevant to your charts, which have
Yep.
projections. I assume the numbers include that 7% or 40% or
It's
90%.
the 7% plus those other developments are the
Okay,
numbers.
are the
to
numbers that are
use.
in those, in
Yes.
those charts?
Yes.
So, but we don't really know what they are now, but that's what you're assuming they will be. I'm partly, there's another question I have later that
Sure.
relates to
Yep.
this, and I just
So
wanted to
we
make sure
started by, instead
yeah,
of using those
that right.
projections from other projects, we started by counting the traffic. We went out and counted the traffic, or in this case, we actually looked back because it was COVID when we started this analysis. We looked at the 2019 counts that were available for the corridor, and we used those pre-COVID numbers as our baseline.
So
Yeah.
that would have been like the existing chart?
That would have been like
That's the one
existing
that's listed
volumes.
existing?
And then, quite
Okay.
possibly, yes.
Okay, so we can't, so it's not really 90, 40,
No,
90 or 70?
It is not
increase.
assuming
Okay, so
40
I'm-
or 90% over what's there
okay,
today.
That's,
No.
that's helps with that.
If I can just kind of regroup and clarify that and maybe just kind of quantify it in a different way. You know, we started with exactly what was our network in 2019. We added in everything that has DRB permitting. So everything that already has a permit to construct, we took their traffic reports and added that in. And then we added the growth factor on top of that. What is the natural growth of the region that is going to continue to add possible vehicle trips? So this is very conservative. Even Parkway or VTrans or regional planning would say this is really conservative. At the same time, what's happening in the downtown as it relates to adding residential units to our downtown wouldn't have been reflected in regional models because we didn't have residential units. There wasn't a lot to factor up, but there is some substantial growth of residential units and other development in the downtown that's kind of creating the spike. But we're capturing that and making sure that it still works.
Yeah, it was just sort of confusing to me that there were those three different percentages, and I was trying to figure out how much more traffic are we talking about between now and 2037.
Yep.
So you've compared, yeah, I think one of my questions was about comparing the Shelburne Street dimensions to, so that one was like a 130-foot diagram, just for the sake of comparing.
Yep. Yeah,
Comparing.
it's similar to that more typical roundabout size, not the mini
Yeah.
roundabout.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned that I was wondering about is obviously it would seem like it would be adds work to do right of way work, so that would be a factor that was mentioned if you had to do a roundabout, and that it would add cost to like acquire property at different points. Let's just see here if I've got these in the same spot here. I know you.
Just to speak a little to the right-of-way acquisition piece, the design team did work on trying to mitigate as much building impact with the positioning of the roundabout. So as you looked at the different examples that they've laid out for us, they are not an exact, dead center line of Main Street, just going down through, take four corners of four different buildings. They did work to strategically minimize as much right-of-way impact as possible with siting each of the different roundabouts.
Yeah, there was a mention of like 3 buildings that you said would have to be taken or demolished or something like that in the way that you had proposed the size of the roundabouts that you had suggested. I'm still looking at, I think I'm at page 4 here, on the safety impacts. And I know you sort of mentioned some of the safety things, but it doesn't really, maybe your document, I mean, some of it you mentioned, but in here it really talks about more preventing head-on crashes and broadside crashes, but there isn't any real mention specifically about the pedestrian safety. I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit about the roundabouts, but
Yes.
there's a footnote in here too, and I think you mentioned it in your comments about this footnote study that says this CMF clearinghouse says there's going to be an increasing accidents with vehicles and bicyclists with roundabouts.
Yeah, this does show that some studies have shown that there can be an increase in that type of crash between vehicles and cyclists, much like Mr.
Yeah,
Barr
and
mentioned.
how did you get that number that says here in the footnote that it says an average of, increase of 38% if there's a roundabout?
I can provide you with that link. When you go into the clearinghouse, you do have to go into the tables.
Oh, no, I did do that, and
Okay.
actually I communicated, maybe you didn't get that, but
I'm happy
that was
to
that was
follow
a,
up.
yeah, and that was a study that was done in the Netherlands in 2017, and it doesn't have very much specificity about it. So, and I sent quite a few links about safe roundabouts for bicyclists to the two folks. So I just wanted to know, since you created this, where you got that 38% more accidents, because it's a very ominous figure
Sure.
that I think is not supported by the document that I looked at online at the citation that I was provided. So just, I think that's something you guys can look at. Fortunately, we're at the phase here that we're just assessing how best to do this. And I realize there's so much complexity. I'm taking a digression here. It is very complex to decide whether you're using what you're talking about of trying to get all of the signals lined up so that everybody goes 20 miles an hour, which is what they've tried to do on Shelburne Road to make sure that you know that you can, design a 30 mile an hour, you're going to keep going. That's one technique that is interrupted when you have what you talked about, which you called the all stop or something like that. And it's also interrupted by the roundabouts. So you have different things that can conflict. I totally get that. I probably studied more about this than I really want to know about of all of this. But in fact, I'm sensitive to what you're trying to do. However, I just feel like there's some questions that this document isn't helpful in helping us decide how to do things. So that's why I'm asking these questions. So let's just see here. Let me make sure that blah, 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 blah. You had mentioned on page 6 of your thing under signal operation that Battery Street, the intent is to have at the Battery Street signalized location, a red arrow display when the walk signal, one of those no right turn kind of things.
Yes.
And because frankly, one of the difficulties is people getting hit when a person makes a left turn or right turn and they're looking for cars and they're not looking for people. Is that possible that could be done at more than just the Battery Street, Main Street intersection? Is that something that is possible to be implemented at any of the intersections?
It's something that we considered, but what we really wanted to do at most locations, and it is an appropriate battery because of the heavy turn volume. At the other locations, we want that turning traffic to be in with the through traffic so that it creates that friction that keeps that driver speed down. We don't want someone to be in their own lane to take the right turn and get an arrow and be able to, and that through traffic to speed by it. That's really what we don't want. And that's the benefit of adding a turn lane and protecting it and stopping it for pedestrians does help traffic operations, but it also, by helping traffic operations, increases speeds, which is really what we don't want on this corridor.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you only use those do not turn right arrow things. Like there's one now at Maple and Battery. And so, there's certain times when the right turn coming west on Maple, you cannot make a right turn, or you're not supposed to, the red arrow, to go up Battery Street north. So you're saying that is not used when you have a straight through lane and a right turn? I'm not sure I understand how you are differentiating this.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight the uniqueness of the traffic flow that occurs at some of these locations. Battery and Maple, it's a very heavy single, turn because the side streets, they're not through destinations. They're not high use destinations. Commuting traffic is making a very specific movement. Battery and Main is the same thing. Main Street's going to come down and prominent traffic is really going to split different directions. And really actually does the same movement that Battery and Maple does. It's a very heavy single direction turn. Whereas the rest of Main Street's corridor really has a very predominant higher volume through movement from the counts that we've done. Yes, there's still side street traffic that peels in and out, but there's still higher volumes of through cars, which changes the way that this recommendation comes from us.
So you don't use them in an area where the assumption is people are mostly not turning,
Correct.
and or there's one lane. There's no separate way to do it.
Correct.
So you have to stop. Okay, so that answers that question. Let's see here. Just see here. I'm gonna skip the heat island effect thing because I think that's sort of a bit of a non-informational kind of piece of information. So let's see here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the signal progression, I think you answered the question about that. One other thing I know that is relevant at some intersections is sensitivity to actual traffic, and some cycles are skipped for a particular direction. Is that also going to be incorporated in on Main Street so that when there is, the cycle doesn't just automatically cycle through when there's nobody to go in the other direction and people are sitting there and waiting and getting impatient?
We are
Will it be sensitive to the traffic that's actually needing to get through the intersection, and also the people, frankly?
We are fine tuning the design in that regard. I understand your frustration, especially that happens, say, late in the evening when, you're on the side street and it's staying on the main street and you want it to turn to you and it's not coming to you quickly. What we want to do in this corridor, though, is set it up so that, again, that pedestrian has that expectation that they're going to get the walk signal. And so chances are we will set the phases so that they do. Again, at each of these locations, it's only 2 phases. It's either Main Street is green or the side streets are green. And so we would likely still keep everything on recall so it does keep switching back and forth. But instead of waiting for 150 seconds like you do at some intersections, our cycle length is going to be at 100 seconds or less, which really makes a big difference. It really reduces the amount of time you're waiting for that green to come up for you.
Well, the one of the comments I'll make separately, but is the perception of how long people are going to wait. With regular users of an intersection, the longer their sense of it being a wait, the more likely they're going to step on it when they see a yellow light. So I'll deal with that separately. But the Elmwood and North Street intersection, which has also got Intervale Avenue coming in on it. I don't know if you're familiar with these because, okay. That one is sensitive to not turning on a green for Intervale Avenue when there's no car sitting there. Very important. And I walk through that intersection. I've been walking through there for 30 years, and that made a big difference. The cycle is sensitive to the traffic. So when there's a lot of traffic on North Street keeps going. Green, 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 green. There's no time. It's not on a timer, apparently.
Right.
So, and that conflicts with your other goal of the, and I've got to ask this question because maybe I misunderstood that too. When you say all Main Street is green or all side streets, are you meaning the all 7 intersections we're going to have green for Main Street? And then they'll all switch and all the side streets?
No.
Okay,
no,
I didn't
I'm
think so,
saying
but
at a
the way you
single
said that,
location.
I thought maybe I was getting it wrong.
But the details you're talking about is really fine tuning that we'll get into in the final design, and we'll be making, we would make those decisions as to whether it makes sense. Like in some locations, folks do make the choice that no, in 11 to 6 a.m., 11 at night to 6 a.m., it's going to rest in the Main Street green and only change to the side streets or pedestrians if there's a call. I mean, those are decisions that can be made. That was not our assumption, though. That was not, because we really wanted to meet the goal of really processing those bicyclists and pedestrians in a reliable, regular way. So we were really thinking of, all day being a 2-phase operation that it'll keep cycling to the side streets.
And the information that I'm trying to share is that I don't think that expectation that people will feel like there's a certain rule and it's all going to cycle around and I will wait is going to work. It works as safely as when it's on call and it's sensitive to the traffic. And people are not sitting there, it encourages bad behavior, which I'll mention separately. But so that's a separate thing. I know that I had sent a spreadsheet that I assume got sent of the different delay times and the delays and the queues between that you had. And I just my quick question about that is. From the data here, it looks like the same a number of cars queued up are coming up with grossly different durations of wait.
Yes.
And I know, and so just, and this is all posted, so you'll get this. You can look at it between when we have to make decisions. I'm just referring to my fellow commissioners here. So I don't understand that, and maybe you can explain that, you know, like your comparison, your performance comparison of 2037 says that, that in the eastbound or heading for I-89 at that intersection of Winooski and Main, there's going to be a backup of 15.8 vehicles roughly. If they're 25, I just estimate 25 feet a vehicle. And that, that the existing condition is that takes a minute and a half to get through for a car. And that westbound, you know, in the afternoon, the peak hour, heading for downtown on Main Street at that intersection, your statistic that you provide is that it's going to have, you know, a 19.4 vehicle backup, which, but it'll only take a minute for each car to get through. So that's one thing. And then you have the new one, the signalized in 2035 with those numbers. It's going to have a backup of 13.9 vehicles during the morning commute, and it'll take just 3.2 minutes for a car to get through. So it's doubling.
Yes. So
Okay.
happy to answer that.
And
So
then, yeah,
as you increase, as the traffic volume increases and congestion increases, what ends up happening, you know, is someone may not be in the leg, may not be in the section, they may back up, their queue might back into the next intersection, in which case they're counted then as being part of the queue for the next intersection. Although that vehicle's delay is still associated with what's causing the problem, which could be the downstream signal. So your queue length is maximized by how long that length of that leg is. But your delay can be longer than that because you might get stuck further upstream and it might take you longer to get all the way through the intersection.
and the roundabout option for the same thing, it's saying that it'll still have an 18 vehicle queue. You know, so the other one was 15.8 and 13.9, an 18 vehicle queue, but it's going to take 5 minutes to get through
And that's mostly
that same
because,
intersection.
yeah, that pedestrian friction is that much higher because the pedestrians are pretty much consistently walking across the street in front of those. So between every car, it's pedestrians crossing.
At the peak
Yes.
period,
Yeah,
but,
these
but
are
not
these
the
are
rest of
peak
the
hour data.
for that peak hour. So, I, you know, and then when the westbound one, it's like the same 18 vehicle lineup, and it's supposed to take 8.5 minutes to get through the intersection. You're just saying that's because there's all the pedestrians that are slowing
Yeah,
it all
but
down.
At the roundabout, yes.
So there's just a constant flow of
At
pedestrians.
some of
through.
the intersections, there is really a
Okay,
constant
so
flow of
that, so
pedestrians.
it is the pedestrians that are making it difficult for the cars.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what I was sensing, but it wasn't clear to me what was with that. I
Just
think,
to also highlight that those delays are per intersection. So you make it through one intersection after 5 minutes, you're going to hit the next intersection's 5 to 8 minute queue. It is
yeah,
100% gridlock in the downtown during the peak hour with the roundabouts because nothing can move. Side streets can't move. It's a really tough location for a roundabout application with our pedestrians that we're encouraging that already exists today. And I don't know how those are actually factored up. That would be my.
No, we did not do any factoring up of the
So
pedestrian
the
volumes.
pedestrians aren't factored the same way the vehicles are. And we're encouraging more pedestrians to come use this area.
well, and it doesn't help that you have a stoplight at UVM, which is what backs it all the way up down to downtown right now. I mean, it is backed up all the way down to South Winooski every night from the Main Street, North Prospect intersection. So we know there's a problem. Anyway, so these are some of the things that make me concerned about the information. And I'm not trying to shoot down what you're suggesting. I'm just saying there's going to be there's some things to think about that I don't think are quite clearly addressed in this memo and can be addressed better in, further information. So let me just see if I know, sorry, I'm taking a long time here, but, so your numbers that you have on the signalized performance chart on page 8, that includes the 7-minute or 7-second advanced walk times for all those intersections?
For the signalized, yes.
The signalized ones? Okay,
Yep.
so that does, and just out of curiosity, how do you define an A level of service versus an F? How does that,
Yeah, there's a range in the number of seconds. So an F
So
is
that's just
anything-
seconds based on-
Yes.
okay,
So
okay.
an F is anything over 80 seconds, and A through E are various intervals that are less than that.
okay, I didn't know what I figured it was. It doesn't really matter, A through F, but, you know, because we've got the times anyway. So, let's see, I think, let me just see if this is that. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that one, we got that, did that. All right, so make sure that I've got that. Did,
Everybody
okay.
gets 20 free questions.
23 questions?
23 ones.
23, is that where I'm at?
Good.
Good, keep count. No, well,
Start
I
charging.
knew it was going to be, a lot, but I tried to get rid of some of them earlier, and I've been struggling with this. So, I have a couple last things here. You had mentioned that you were saying that there was intentional to slow down the side street, or increase the delay on the side streets so that
Yes.
people don't try to, whatever, use an alternate. Okay, so I think that also, could also feed into this problem of people thinking, oh, it's going to be a long wait, I better step on it when I see the yellow. But, okay, so then my last point, and I've got this all posted so that you guys can look it over, is that there's quite a bit of, I think there was a document that was provided in May and even before that about how expensive it is to have accidents at these intersections, and that it is the number one most crash location in Vermont as of the 2012-2016 data at that Winooski and Main Street location. And rest in peace, Tony Reddington would be here and would have spoken to this, that the cost is, in injuries and property damage is significant to the population. So the goal of reducing traffic to 20 miles an hour doesn't really solve that problem. It reduces it, but it doesn't cut back on crashes. It just cuts back on the intensity of them. And for that, according to one of the documents that Tony Reddington put together, I didn't, verify whether this is accurate, but this is what he provided, that there's like 78 different injuries that have taken place over that 10-year period. And it's like $15 million of expense for the population, that those poor people that got stuck with that. So this is an important decision for us to be making, because I have a little bit of a concern that and this is why I asked the question about, is it 7% increase, or, if we've already recognized that we've cost people $15 million over 10 years in accidents on Main Street. What are we doing to make sure that we're not going to be continuing that just because we're continuing to have the same method of intersection control?
Yeah, if I could.
It's really a serious question. It's, we're spending
I
$30 million
agree with you.
on this, and, it's going to be a bill that we're paying debt on for until
Safety
2035,
is
37.
a critical issue. One thing I want to point out, and I don't have, and I can look up a reference for it, but I'm quite confident that when traffic is moving at 20 miles an hour, it is much easier to avoid a collision than it is when you're going 25, 30 miles an hour. So there is still, not only is the severity decreased, there is the expectation that crashes are easier to avoid the slower the traffic is moving. So I can't quote a source on that, but
Well, obviously, that's why the roundabout, the example that we've used about the 15-mile-an-hour approach to the one in Athens, Ohio, you do have time to be looking for pedestrians
Right.
separately from looking for cars, which doesn't happen at a signalized intersection. The cars are looking to make sure they can get between the cars, and that's when the person gets, that's a pedestrian that has, used more than their 7 seconds of free time, gets hit. So that's a big worry for me. I walk everywhere, and I've been walking everywhere for 30 years. So my last thing, I made some concerns and comments in May. The 4 of those intersections are on the top, the top 50 crash locations in Vermont, not just Burlington. We're talking Vermont. Number 1 is that Maine and South Winooski. The 24th is Maine and St. Paul. 31st is Maine and Battery. 52nd is Maine and South Union. This is across the state. These are the most crash-prone locations. And then obviously that one at Pearl and Winooski was one, but we don't know the statistics now. But I'm going to just mention what I had said before, and you can factor this in however you want. I had said that the roundabouts do provide 24/7 traffic calming. They create a safer intersection for both pedestrians and bicyclists, and I think if you look at those other statistics about the bicyclists, I think there's more information there. They keep the traffic flowing while there is traffic, and they don't hold it up when there isn't traffic. They negotiate, and this is really important, that the negotiation, I'm reading this because it is important, and the negotiation between vehicles at the intersection is separated from negotiation between drivers of vehicles and pedestrians, making for a safer passage for everybody. Eye contact is facilitated between all users passing through the intersections, resulting in safer passage for all. Roundabouts avoid forced greenhouse gas emissions caused by vehicles idling at signals when their movement is prohibited, even when there are no competing vehicles or pedestrians or bicyclists in the intersection. Roundabouts cut CO2 emissions by 20 to 30%. Now, that's a Tony Reddington statistic. I have not researched it myself, but I'm passing that on. Signals at intersections are challenging to program in ways to avoid vehicle idling or pedestrians waiting to cross, despite there being no other vehicles in an intersection. So what happens is there's this intersection waiting experience that can induce drivers and pedestrians to unsafely ignore the signal and move through the intersection without regard to the signals. And I see this happen all the time at Main Street and Church when people are trying to get over to the Flint. I see it happen in other places. I do not see it happen at the Pearl and Winooski intersection where you have the all-way stop. That's why I think that's a good design thing. Compared to the roundabouts, the signals actually unfortunately induce drivers to step on the gas at yellow signals, causing collisions with other vehicles. I've seen a decrease in the number of people going through the Elmwood North Street intersection who step on the gas when they see yellow. Since that cycle is gone, there's more sense of fairness that I'm not going to be waiting here forever. Even though you're saying that the design you have is predictability of wait, the people are, you'll never, I don't think, mind read what's the most comfortable wait time for people. And so people are going to go, yellow, I got to get through this. I'm in a hurry. Compared to the roundabouts, frankly, the signals leave pedestrians vulnerable to be hit by turning vehicles. Absolutely. The cars are looking for other cars, are not looking for pedestrians. Compared to the roundabout, signals leave motorcyclists and scooter riders vulnerable to being hit from the rear while turning or they'll get rear-ended. And frankly, roundabouts in the long haul are less expensive to maintain. They require, don't require electricity costs and mechanic repairs and equipment upgrades year after year. So that's just my last pitch after I've had some questions about the content of what you're presenting. So just things to consider. We have time for you to think about it. I recognize, like I said, there are competing ways of dealing with this problem of cars and people trying to get through Main Street. I recognize you have a challenging thing to do, and I just feel like we have an opportunity here to spend the $30 million that we're borrowing and we'll be in debt until 2037 on this stuff to get it in a way that is not old school, signals, as usual, we just use the same old, nothing new. I think we do have an opportunity. It's not, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what you're going to do. I just feel like this is our opportunity to do something that's going to actually be good. And otherwise we wait until 2037 and try something else. And that's an expensive thing, it's an expensive experiment. So thank you for humoring me on this, but I feel like there's information that you should have and that we should all consider to make it a really great street, if we really want to make it a great street. So, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Damiani.
Sure. I just have a few quick questions. I appreciate Commissioner Overby's questions and comments that you provided this evening. The cross streets, the pedestrian crossings at the cross streets is something that I'm personally really interested in. And I saw that the memo references 7 seconds advance for folks crossing Main Street, but is that the same number for
Correct.
cross streets?
Yes.
Just with the shorter
Yep.
distance,
Yep.
inevitably.
Yeah,
folks will get
we still are going to have that leading pedestrian interval at 7 seconds for either, so they'll be able to get across that much further.
And is in the 2037 future traffic volume analysis, is the city's ordinance around parking minimums along transit corridors factored into sort of those numbers?
We made no adjustment for that. We really just looked at those traffic studies and traffic analysis for any of those permitted developments, as well as those infrastructure projects and the anticipated traffic relocations. So we did not factor in any potential benefit from increased TDM,
Okay.
alternate modes, et cetera.
And then I think just sort of based off of the comments tonight, and I think what has gone on in the past, I think it'll be helpful in future communications around this particular project and specifically the intersection control study portion of this, for staff to sort of elaborate more on why staff is recommending all signals versus a mix of roundabouts and some signals. Just I think that's going to come up a lot in future comments. So just sort of getting ahead of that, I think would be helpful.
Okay. I mean, to really briefly summarize it, at this point in time, staff is recommending all signals, with the exception of South Champlain. That would still stay as its
Stop sign.
two side street stop signs. But I will let questions complete before I kind of regroup on that.
I'm all set.
All right, thank you. Shifting gears for a minute, can you briefly describe microtunneling?
I am not an expert on microtunneling, but basically the work that's going to happen. So Commissioner Hovigan is referring to the update proposes microtunneling as a way to replace a portion of the ravine sewer from the back of the firehouse actually out to its connection on Main Street. So the ravine sewer is about 20 feet in the ground, a little shallower on the back of the fire station because that's so deep back there already. And basically we're gonna dig a hole in the ground and we're gonna put a machine in there and we're gonna core 4-foot diameter hole through the earth out to Main Street and dig a receiving hole and grab that there and shove a pipe through it. That's like the 5-year-old talk on that.
I like
I
it.
understood it.
Very clear.
But that will basically take the flow off the existing section of the ravine that goes kind of in this odd angle across the parking lot and put it in a purposeful way across the parcel so that if and as that parcel redevelops, it can be worked around in a meaningful way and it's a resilient piece of infrastructure.
Great, thank you. I guess a comment on, which, I gather at this level of planning here, we don't have a lot of specifics for things. I mentioned in, suppose the traffic is controlled with signals. I think there's a lot we can do there. You mentioned, of course, like the leading pedestrian intervals, but also in terms of the treatments for people on bikes. And at the current signalized intersections, I've had close calls getting right hooked by people, and sure not the only one there. That if we can introduce elements of protected intersections there, that's to consider. And to really, like, as we're we're making this generational investment in our main street with curb protected bike lanes on each side. See what we can do about squeezing in some curb protection at the intersections. Like, not only are people on bikes like more visible with like the clear space and the bump outs that shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians, literally you're preventing people from cutting the corner, and it's not plastic bollards that need to get replaced.
Yep, that's where you're at a little bit of a disadvantage not having seen the preliminary plans. So we will be posting those hopefully very, very soon. And then we can certainly highlight that out to commissioners when those are
Yeah.
available
Okay, great.
as we
Thanks.
go through this public comment period.
Thank you. Look forward to that. And the other concern I have with the protected bike lanes is the ability to turn left. And I gather part of that is like a sort of a queuing area in the intersection to be able to cross and then turn yourself, wait for your turn to cross, go again. Very good. Great. I'll look forward to further details there. Just out of curiosity, why is the afternoon peak so much worse than the morning peak?
It's a great question, and I'm going to guess in the morning peak, what you don't have is the commercial trips that you have in the afternoon peak. I mean, think of even just, I know from doing the parking study, there's a bunch of parking available in the morning that is not available in the afternoon because you have those commercial trips that are occurring. Not only do you have the reverse commuting trip home, from workers, but you also have then those shopping trips and that other activity. And that's pretty typical in most locations.
Yeah. Theater, dinner,
Right.
restaurants.
I mean, industry, national standard, Institute of Transportation Engineers guidance, the PM peak is historic
not-
unless there is an interesting land use that happens. And actually, we saw it here once with how the high school moved downtown. Jen actually was their traffic engineer for that. It was the morning peak in the vicinity of the high school that was actually worse for our network. It is very rare.
Yeah. Good. Great. I would say just, as an aside on the document spoke a lot to vehicle level of service. As an aside, I would love to see, sort of hinted around it in qualitative terms, I'd love to see level of service for pedestrians, cyclists, transit level of service. Is part of that as well. Obviously, vehicles are not the only player worthy of measuring the impacts here for. And speaking of, just I have a comment on the sort of like the roundabout thing. I think certainly now we have the benefit of seeing the Shelburne Street roundabout in place. It's a fantastic piece of infrastructure, especially for drivers. That's what it is. And like the images that Commissioner Overby has shared from Akron, Ohio and elsewhere, if you zoom out there, like those are suburban locations. Those are not urban places with a lot of pedestrian traffic. I appreciate what some in it's Jeff Speck, who has spoken before, and others in the urbanism world caution about roundabouts in urban locations. There's never really that full stop cleared phase for pedestrians to cross. Pedestrians, they have shorter crossings, but more of them in a longer roundabout way to get across. Like the roundabouts are primarily vehicle infrastructure. Like they're fantastic in some applications, and those applications are more likely suburban locations. Yeah, I appreciate and respect the analysis here. And certainly look forward to seeing the details as the designs evolve. Looking forward to seeing the data from the parking occupancy and turnover studies as well. Yeah, nothing else on my end. Yes.
Can I just make a correction? The Athens, Ohio roundabout is on the campus of Ohio University. It is not a suburban area. It is in a highly trafficked student crossing location. So it's not That just didn't happen to be when I took the picture. There wasn't anybody walking there. It's not a suburban roundabout, just for clarification.
It's more like at the athletic campus.
Trying to think where would be a comparable crossing. Let me think about it. I'll tell you what it'd be like in Burlington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chat offline. Let's check and see if there are any members of the public interested in speaking on this item.
Chair Hogan, I'll allow Felipe back to speak.
Yep.
Hey, it's me again.
Welcome
I
back.
want to thank this. Yeah, hello. I want to thank the speaker for the excellent presentation. I think it was really well done. I think it demonstrates that the signalized intersections are the best option for Main Street. I recognize, I acknowledge the concerns that the other counselor had, and they're strong advocates for roundabouts, but I really think they're not congruent with an urban setting that should prioritize pedestrians. One thing that a roundabout really does it very effectively is that it totally separates corners from each other, right? Crossing diagonally is just a lot more difficult. To the designers, I wanted to ask if they're considering, or if they have considered already, raising the intersection. I think that would be extremely effective in meeting their goal to reduce the flow of traffic to 20 miles an hour, and also to prevent that any collisions that might occur when vehicles are turning at the intersection.
At this point in time, within our corridor, we have a curbless section between Church Street and the Flynn. But that is really the only kind of raised intersection area that's being proposed.
Okay, I guess I would strongly advocate for you all to consider raised intersections. They really increase the safety for pedestrians and cyclists and help prevent collisions. They will regulate traffic flow to be slower, right? So you won't get that situation where somebody's gunning it for a yellow because there's a big speed hump in the way. Yeah, that's all I have. But I'm glad that the council sounds like they're going to go forward with recommending the signalized intersections. That's great. I think it's appropriate. And I just urge you to consider raising the intersections to increase that safety and further your own goals.
Anyone else for public comment on this item?
Yeah, Jack Piano, you're up next in.
I was just going to bring up the same point that Felipe brought up, but I just wanted to be a +1 for the raised intersections. I think as someone who's a daily pedestrian and very frequent cyclist, and it's something that I think would be, I don't know, very much appreciated from a safety perspective when navigating that area of the downtown. That's it.
Thank you.
Michael Arnold.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to first, throw my support behind raised intersections for both cyclists and pedestrians, and then also ask if any attempts are going to be made to add transit signal priority, since the traffic times are going to be increased through these intersections, and bus speeds are already extremely slow through the downtown corridor. So yeah, have you considered installing that? Thanks.
Thank you.
As it relates to that type of preemption, we're working with GMT. We've been having conversations first about consolidated stops, any rerouting that's happening. The transit priority through the intersection hasn't come up as a topic yet, but we can certainly make sure to cover it.
you.
We do have someone back in queue who spoke.
Sure.
Felipe.
Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for so long to speak that I kind of forgot one major point, and that's exactly what Michael Arnold had just mentioned, which is the signal priority for mass transit. I think that's going to be extremely important. The committee's own projections state that vehicular traffic is above trend. So we want to be able to, as a city, encourage alternate transportation modes, and part of that means giving them priority. That's all.
Noted.
No
Thank you.
problem.
That's it.
That's all public comment. All right. Great. I think we're clear. We're not seeking any action on this item this time.
Yeah.
Final.
Yeah, if I can just
Yeah,
kind
please.
of wrap up and let you guys know where we're going with this.
Please.
So, with having recently received the preliminary plans, we've distributed those to many internal city stakeholders, but we're also going to be posting the information on the city's Great Streets website and pushing that out to all the stakeholders who we have kind of engaged already through our process that are interested, as well as just kind of letting people know that it's out there and available. The comments that we're collecting are coming back to the design team mid-January. So there's still, time to be able to have this out there. We're gonna have the plans, we're gonna have our larger communication, more than what's in your memo, the intersection study, and, just kind of where we're at with everything. So that's gonna be out there. I do want to highlight to the point about what our recommendation is in this memo. Seeing the impacts that come through with the signals versus the roundabouts, staff does have a very strong direction towards keeping the corridor signalized. The right-of-way impacts alone would make the Great Streets Main Street project name inaccurate. Removing large portions of some of the downtown core's historic and oldest buildings would be a non-starter, I think, to moving this project forward. That's my opinion. Obviously, we've not done any outreach as it relates to that so specifically, but just even from the businesses that we have engaged in some of these properties, they're concerned about just the construction outside, needless to say, not having a home anymore. So with that thought, the design team is on hold until mid-January, at which point they will kind of pick this back up with our comments and any directions that potentially could change the course of where we're going, but really the direction we're pointed is towards advancing with signalized intersections at this point in time, and we'll start looking into some of those other concerns that have been brought up to really refine this and move this forward towards 90%. The long-term schedule, and it's not long-term, is final plans and going out to bid in June of this year. So we would then procure for a contractor and work towards starting construction in September. And obviously the plug of this project involves a lot more than just traffic and bike lanes and trees. This will also refresh all of the water mains and sewer mains under the ground, the services that go to all of these buildings, as well as the ravine work, which will take a significant flow offline, both in the immediate vicinity of the project, but also as well as the blocks between Main and Maple Street, with the really long-term goal of being able to allow some of those properties to disconnect from that piece of infrastructure and allow the city to not rely on it in the future. So that's kind
Great.
of the
Yeah.
last peanut there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Right. Thank you very much for the
You're welcome.
Yes.
the
And if you
presentation.
guys have more questions for Jen, we can keep everybody connected, informational like tonight was, but
Yeah, appreciate the chance to have this dialogue here. All right. Moving forward, item 6 on our agenda, director's report.
All right. Thank you for the commission for meeting this month and being able to focus the bulk of the meeting on this important issue for Main Street. I just want to echo that this $30 million generational opportunity is here because of TIF. TIF has a timeline. The property rights and acquisitions that would need to be managed would blow out of the water the timeline you just heard. So we definitely appreciate the input tonight, and I think the comments on, making sure the intersections are designed appropriately, whether they're raised, how we manage the bike, left turning movements, all those things we look forward to working with you on as we progress with the design. I just want to thank the team for all the good work and our efforts to coordinate this with the South End Construction Coordination Plan, because this is yet one of many projects. And we believe if things are successful with the federal budget bill in the next couple of days, we will have additional good news for more big Great Streets projects for us all to tackle together. In my director's report, we talked about the Chittenden Solid Waste Drop-Off Center. Thank you, everybody. And trying to move ahead with that stuck issue that we've been struggling with for years. As you know, currently the CSWD operates compost only at 339 Pine Street, which is a suboptimal range of services for our Burlington community. We have worked to try to unlock this issue by offering to CSWD to have the city purchase outright the Flynn Avenue parcel, which is 3 acres behind Metalworks, 195-201 Flynn Avenue, instead of entering into what was a very complex 20-year lease purchase agreement for that property that could be revoked. That would enable us to move our soil management operations, which are currently happening at 339 Pine, over to Flynn Avenue, which could open up the potential to have a drop-off center at 339 Pine or at Flynn Avenue to give the community some choice. So we're very bullish about this step. It's going to the Chittenden Solid Waste District board tonight. It got approved by the council earlier this month. And that's good because the option to purchase the Flynn Avenue expires at the end of this month. So I very much look forward to working with you all to improve drop-off center services for the public as well as our own soil management. I included an update on the GMT budget, FY24. I serve on the board with another commissioner, Meg Polite, as well as 2 alternates. And the budget coming forward, staff has done a very good job in trying to make the best of a challenging situation. The proposal is to increase Burlington's assessment 11%. There is the reinstatement of fares, all this with the reduction of federal support. Now that the COVID funds have slowed, still results in a 3% reduction in service over pre-COVID times. One of the things I would love to get your support with moving forward is how we prioritize regional and statewide funding for transit, because having it rely on the property tax in Burlington, we pay over 53% of all assessments in the region, is not a way to grow transit, because we all know the property tax is regressive and a limited source of funding. So, challenge for us all to work on moving forward. There were a few last project updates, but happy to answer any questions and commissioner comments.
Great, thank you for that. Moving forward to item 7 on the agenda, Commissioner Communications. Commissioner Damiani.
Sure. My only one is excellent job on the winter cleanup this past weekend. That went, I think, really well. I had a sort of a 3-part sort of question to that. One is, could you just briefly summarize what the department's sort of communication plan is for winter parking or winter parking ban specifically? Second is, do we collect any data when folks, I'm assuming, pay their ticket online, they go pick up their car? Sort of, do we collect any data on sort of why people miss the message of about that? And then third is, I forgot what the third one is. I didn't write it down. It's okay. Just 2 parts then.
We'll hit the first.
And I'll preface this too, is that I live near where all the cars that get towed, so I hear the tow trucks all through the night, and that's not a complaint. That's just a comment, and this was sort of my first time being on the commission and going through a winter parking ban and sort of making that connection.
Well, we'll hit the first two, and if
Yep.
the third one comes into your mind, we'll hit that one too. And this is great timing. We just had another kind of debrief of how this last snow ban went internally, which focuses on everything from decision making to the operations and the communication. So we had a pretty healthy debrief, as we do after any kind of big event, and I think we consider snow bans always a big event, even though they happen a few times a year. In terms of the communications plan, I'll just walk you through kind of strategically, we want to reach everybody. We want to use many different modes to reach people, even though in ordinance, the official way is the overhead parking ban lights. We recognize if you don't go outside because it's snowing, or if you're out of town, somebody's got your keys, you've got to have other methods to reach people. So tactically, we have a bunch of things in our wheelhouse that we use. First, most powerfully, probably is the VT alert system. That is a state system. It's a pass-through grant from the federal government that the state makes the technology allowable to municipalities. Thankfully, free of charge. It's allowed us to reach, depending on the issue, between a few people to about 15,000 people for really high-profile events when we're trying to reach everybody in the system. VT Alert goes out for snow bans via text, via email, and via robocalls, which we use for snow bans, given that we're trying to help people avoid $150 fine, as well as we want the streets to be safe. We want the opportunity to clean them. So I think Saturday morning, the decision was made rather early to go out with snow ban. So VT Alert went out about 9 a.m., I think, that morning, hopefully giving people who got that enough time to prepare. At the same time, once the decision is made, our operations teams kind of disperse, and so the overhead parking ban lights are going on. We have some challenges with the technology there to get them on all at the same time, but basically we're getting them all on throughout the course of the day leading up to the 3 p.m. deadline, by which time they have to be on. We're trying to hit them early, though. We're trying to get those on as early as possible. We've got 3 pretty active social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we've more than doubled our followers on 2 of those channels. We're starting to get more active on Instagram, just looking at the demographics and the trends of how social media is going nowadays. So we are now posting to all 3 of those channels. The burlingtonvt.gov website, for any really high profile event, including snow bans, will have a yellow kind of red alert on the main site that will transmit to every burlingtonvt.gov site. So that's only applicable for things like snow bans or boil water advisories, where if you go to any Burlington VT page, you'll see the message. There'll be a link with more information. There's some DPW specific messages that you've got to come to our pages for, just giving you details just in case like you see things sometimes on one page or another. We're also sending a press release out pretty much with the VT alert that goes to all the main television channels, radio channels, high profile stakeholders who might have a large network where they can disseminate news, such as yourselves, city councilors, organizations like the BBA, Champlain College, our emergency management team at VT Alert, folks like that. And I may be missing a couple off the top of my head, but tactically and then we've also translated some of our most important messages into a couple different languages. We're at now, I think, 7 for snow bans. And in fact, one of our internal employees was just able to translate into a new language. So for the next snow ban, we'll have Bozanski, if I'm saying that correctly, translated to hit that. That's important for us. We've just taken on the Pine Street team side our first telelanguage call. The water resources teams now had about 3 or 4 of those. That's an opportunity where people can call in and get real-time information interpreted, patched through immediately to an interpreter. That worked really well. Myself and Val Ducharme, our customer service supervisor, was able to talk to a new resident about setting up the recycling services, trying to get everybody that's kind of relevant to that trained up so that more and more of us can speak, such as calling the parking services enforcement team about where their car might be. We want them to be able to help anybody who might have a language barrier. So that is an important tactical goal of ours, but we've expanded our communications to have the snow bans translated into a couple different languages. Those go out a few different ways. We've tried to encourage the media to push those out. I haven't seen a ton of success with that, but we're hoping that they can be good partners on pushing out translated languages. I think tactically that's probably where I can leave it for our communications on snow bans. To your point, to your next question about have we tried to unpack how people are missing this. One of the things we realized for this unique storm is that the first night when other municipalities did call a snow ban, operationally, we didn't see the need for it. We did put out a message through all those channels except VT Alert, because we can't use VT Alert for urgent things, so that didn't allow us to send one out on Friday, but we did let the community know as broadly as we could, including through the media, other channels, that we wouldn't be doing a snow ban, but we would reconsider one for Saturday morning. I think for this recent round, a lot of the anecdotal feedback we got through our parking services team is that folks didn't think we would call one when there was no more kind of snow falling throughout Saturday, even though the cleanup was clear to the operational team that they needed the curb to curb to clean up. So we do try to collect that data anecdotally, but we've never, I don't think, formalized the approach.
Yeah, I was just curious just to try and figure out how a lot of people potentially missed that message. And then I guess the third part is sort of when they do pay the ticket, are they reminded of all these, these numerous options that they could try and get that message?
Yeah,
in the future.
Yeah, one of the things that the interim parking services manager and I kind of unpacked was that elevator pitch on how to avoid these things in the future. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Overby.
I just had a couple questions on what the status of the marketplace garage construction is. How's that going? You have any information on that?
I unfortunately don't have full details. Work is underway. I know the work is critical. There's some beam patching that will enable the garage to extend its lifespan. But I can get you more information after I talk to Jeff and Matt.
Part of what drove that is a person asked me about the downtown employee discount or free parking at the at the new downtown Lakeside / Cherry Street garage or College Street garage, and expanding whether or not it would be something that could be considered expanding the employee free parking to the marketplace garage, and with the construction under, obviously not, but I also thought that wasn't possible anyway. And I noticed that Bank Street is now like one way and has had the parking meters removed. What's with that? Was
Yes.
that something was on an agenda that I completely missed?
I think what you're talking about
Probably.
is the encumbrance for City Place Partners to construct City Place on Bank Street between St. Paul and Pine. And the developers, anytime the adjacent property owner wants to use the public right-of-way, they need to go to the license committee and then go to the full city council. And so City Place Partners did that for this first phase of work on their foundation. And there will be right now, there is no reduction in parking on street. They have reduced travel lanes, but no parking to date. Their second request for an encumbrance coming in several months, not imminently, will likely have parking impact.
Are they paying for those spots then? The ones that have been, but the people are parking at without having a meter? Or is that
Correct.
just,
So
yeah.
if there is a meter obstruction, then the adjacent property owner, through that encumbrance agreement, has to pay for the lost revenue.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you'd put in like one of those little kiosks somewhere else so that those spots are now on a kiosk and not the meters, because the meters are missing.
I
It's a
see.
lucky spot to park.
Yep.
If you know about it.
Yep.
Park
will follow
on
up on
that
that.
stretch of bank, or, I just was curious because I hadn't
Right.
I hadn't noticed that until I went. So,
I was talking about if they encumber the parking space that they need to pay for. What you're discussing is that the public parking is still available, but that the meters are not at the spaces,
Right.
and therefore what is happening to that revenue.
I was just
follow-up.
curious, yeah, what happened of that? Because usually that has come to the,
Yep.
it's come to the commission, and I figure I missed whatever meeting that happened at.
That's a good question. I'll follow up. 2 good questions.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
Commissioner Mutano.
Just a couple comments. Yeah, I thought the response to the storm last weekend was outstanding, and especially the Riverside Avenue bike lanes and these other so-called like main bicycling corridors. I was surprised, not surprised, I was pleasantly aware and was happy to find them like all readied up before all of the other sidewalks. And all around, I found that the pedestrian rights of way were clear, and I think that's a good signal for Burlington residents and people who use those modes that the city really does care, and I hope that we can keep that up. Yeah, that's all. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Mutano. Commissioner Barr.
Yeah, I'll echo that the cleanup, the prep and cleanup I saw was really good. We heard them all night long. And I almost suspected that maybe college students were either studying and not paying attention to anything, and maybe that's why all the cars were there, because my street is predominantly college students in the evening. But other than that, my only comment or question is on the intersections that have the white bollards, plastic bollards, and it might be because it's new on my street, and maybe the plows came by and took them out, but it just seems like all of them are gone now. And I did a see-click fix to see it, but I'm just curious if that might become, if that is just a phase thing. I'm not remembering if we were actually going to do a bump out there. And this would go for anywhere, that we try these staged events.
Yes, we are evaluating that intersection bump out for whether it design or the geometry of it works for a permanent installation. Same thing we did at other quick build installations like Five Corners. So yes, they can be a challenge, and we've struggled with bollards and plowing around them on our narrow streets, and that's why ultimately curbing is our best friend, because the plow follows the curb line instead of plowing through it.
Right. And I'm not sure if it wasn't cars that are coming down that just don't see it.
We will reinstall in the spring.
Yeah. All right. Vice Chair O'Neill Vivanco.
Yeah, I was looking for the, I didn't, usually UVM sends an email as well. But I have all my, like, I've got Public Works and UVM.
Yeah.
I don't know, Commissioner Mutano, if you got a UVM one, about the snow ban. And I don't know if it was because technically the end of the semester, but I was just checking my deleted email and I didn't see it in there. Because when we get it from UVM, that can also hit the students when they do a blast. Because it was the end of the semester, maybe.
Right.
I did have a conversation with the emergency management director during our off-season snow, just to confirm that they were plugged into the alert system and to encourage them and or to have them tap in, or to see if there was any way to tap into kind of broader communications. It's a really good conversation, so I know they're on it. They did say they would add the alert, sign up to some of their web pages. Gentleman is on my kind of broad distribution list.
Okay.
From the one office. I think I have a few UVM officials. I did learn that my president's office contacted.
Mhm.
So there are a few folks on that list, and the conversation we had in the office made it clear that we prioritize not enforcing arresting students. We want them to know about this. So my understanding is that the snow ban information and DC alert line a little bit more broadly disseminated online, and that there's already a system in place that we're sharing information about our snow ban. So sounds like that might not have happened.
I don't think so. Commissioner Mutano, you're at UVM, right?
Yeah, I also had a little trouble hearing that last part, but I got an email. Oh man, I had the date. not about the specific parking ban. So on the 14th, just like a reminder that, hey, it's winter time, there might be parking bans, but not for the particular weekend one. And it wasn't really sent kind of as like,
Maybe I lost him.
Mm.
But I think in the past, I've gotten
Right.
on my UVM email.
regular and dependable for all students and, you know, staff, faculty members, anyone that can be reached that way, would be outstanding advance notice.
I think we missed, if you made a recommendation, your computer froze, we might have missed if you made a recommendation on how to reach faculty, staff, students.
Yeah, I could get the exact name. I'm on campus right now, and I guess the internet just went out. But let's see what it's called. Essentially, like a mass email. They send it like it's a student alert. They often send it with regards to like crimes that occur off campus.
Yeah.
Might as well use it for something that's
But it has
directly applicable for individuals.
Well, I will say, you know, one of the reasons we are trying to be more proactive on Instagram is to reach what, you know, just looking at some of the demographics, is there's a younger crowd that's much more active on there. So that was one reason we wanted to make sure our information's out there too, just to recognize there's a trend line in how social media is being used. And we're seeing way more feedback there than we are on Facebook, which used to be our big platform. So that was one approach to try to reach some of the younger folks who might see this online, but be happy to follow up to see if there's more connection we can make with UVM to see if proactively the alerts can go out.
Great.
I could share with you my former position. I got all these messages and then I would put them out through both the parking emails and through our transit. We have an online app that allows us to send out information. What you're talking about, Commissioner Matano, is a mass email, which I was told while I was there that they don't want to keep doing that all the time, because if they do it every time somebody wants to, then you get inundated and people stop reading it.
Yeah.
So they use that for only massive critical things. So what I would do is I would send out emails when I got this message. I would forward it, and then we would send it out to everybody who owns a vehicle or has a permit with us. And then we put it on our, so if you reach out to the interim director, taylor.page@uvm.edu, and I can give you his information. You don't have it, but they can send it through the parking.edu.
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
We'll make it happen.
All right, so two non-snow ban related issues. I know. Thank you for that. One is, could we add meters to South Union by the old YMCA? It used to be the drop-off spot for preschool, and I think there are like 3 spots there that have no meters, maybe 3 or 4, on the right in front of the old Y on Union Street before you get to City Market. Then there's like a bank of 4 or 5. Anyway, yeah, and I'll just I'm full of them. Good thoughts.
You're also full of it.
I know. Is that
She
being
meant it in a
recorded?
good way.
And then finally, the mid-block crossing at Main Street. I just saw the RFB go in, the rapid flashing beacon go in on Main Street by Summit,
Yeah.
which is a main corridor for the O'Neill Vivanco family and many others.
Should we take it out?
The Weinberger
Love
family?
it. And the Weinberger family. But I saw that go in, and my 13-year-old was like, oh my God, it's going to be so much easier to cross there. And I was like, make sure everyone stops. But really appreciate that. I know there are issues around where and how to place these so that they are effective. So thank you. Yeah. That's it.
Great, thank you. Couple things. Heard a report of a sketchy left turn at the Shelburne Street roundabout, coming down the ledge. Not familiar with the area, probably following GPS guidance to turn left at the bottom of ledge. This was a couple weeks ago. I looked at the maps at that time, and I think they weren't quite caught up. I checked again yesterday on Apple Maps and Google Maps, and they both seem to be up to date at this point for my cursory look in terms of it. If you ask for directions from ledge to get down that way. It's telling you to, go down, turn right, go around the circle, go, as would be desired. So anyway, just
We
a
can-
note on like
We can double check.
infrastructure changes, how that makes it through to third-party uses and navigation things.
Yeah.
Cons- Concerned that the white crosswalk markings in the Chauncey roundabout are pretty tore up already. Just not speak highly for the longevity of the materials or installation methods used there. I don't know if that was like a temporary thing that we're planning to do next winter, but it's been plowed on like twice and they're gone.
Yes, we have noticed that issue, and we will be following up with the state and the contractor. I believe that there are warranties on those installs, and we'll be addressing in the spring.
Excellent. Thank you. When is there a negative report to pass along? Sort of mentioned that seen recycling and trash receptacles ending up in the bike lane on Willard Street. A mix of occasionally some of the city blue ones and some private hauler things. I don't have timestamp pictures or anything to go with those anecdotes, but just a reminder for all of our service providers in town to be respecting that right of way. Thank you for the update by email today about what's going on with the construction portal and maybe some future directions of how we're getting project status updates out to folks. Look forward to follow along on that in future meetings.
Good. We're interested as well.
Yeah. And lastly, speaking of reinstalling plastic things in the spring, what can you give your sense of what's happening with the Union Street protected bike lane? Is that intending to replace that, or are we waiting for better bollards or
Right.
money for curb? Or
We're struggling with that one, as you pointed out. We are seeking to install this year the North Champlain Street two-way separated bike lane with concrete curbing. And we are hopeful that this will be a much more viable separated design technique that better withstands plowing and is much more durable. Given the narrow right-of-way on Union Street, we've really struggled to keep those bollards in place. And then frankly, we've been struggling with summer staffing with streets. We've had a number of open positions, and that's limited our production. So sidewalk production this year by the street team was down significantly. And we had to get our contract team, to step up their production in order to get the sidewalk production we needed. So we're coming to the realization that either we need a more durable tool that is more resilient, or we're going to need to add FTEs, positions, to be out there much more regularly reinstalling bollards that get knocked over. So we don't have it right yet. I acknowledge that. We're trying to learn from North Champlain, and we're going to need to be working with you if we want to install the bollards and maintain them better. We're going to have to figure out how to fund some additional positions.
Sure. Thank you. Just one quick reaction there in terms of more temporary than pouring concrete. Seen elsewhere, like plastic bollards helped out with some like sections of curb stop, other things like interspersed in there. So it's not quite as pleasant to drive over as would be otherwise.
Right.
I know there are, I mean, certainly vendors market other horizontal,
Yes.
vertical delineators as
Right.
well, but like
Yes.
Something like cheap concrete sections in there, like
Right.
reflective tape.
I think that the problem that we've found, and I'm open to continue the conversation, is that unless the concrete is fully installed and not just pinned, that it will come up with the plow. And we have not found an installation. We tried the armadillos on North Avenue, and we have tried some pinning, but it hasn't been a match for the plow.
Short of Jersey Barriers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
Not gonna move that, but it also doesn't look very nice.
I'd rather ride
Yeah.
in a Jersey barrier protected lane than
Yeah.
imaginary bollard protected lane.
You can get them painted, maybe.
Great. All right. Yeah, thanks for that update. Appreciate it. Nothing further on my end. With that, I will close Commissioner communications and move forward to our next agenda item, adjournment.
Do adjourn.
January 18th. We have a motion from Commissioner Barr.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Vice Chair O'Neill Levanco. Is there any discussion around that motion? All right, let's go to a vote then on the phone. Commissioner Mutanu,
Aye.
Commissioner Barr,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Neill Levanco,
Aye.
Commissioner Overby,
Aye.
Commissioner Damiani.
Aye.
Aye for myself. We are adjourned 8:36.